The Book of Ea, a spiritual odyssey beyond the visible. My progress was astounding, far surpassing anything I could have imagined. My martial arts colleagues, unaware of these manifestations, marveled at my new skills, constantly asking me what the secret of this extraordinary training was that transformed me day by day. Chapter 3. The Breath of the Invisible. For 2 entire years, my master manifested through Fabienne. She became the channel, the voice through which he spoke to me, guided me, and trained me. Each session lasted about 2 hours, during which I plunged into a world of subtleties and mysteries, learning to perceive the entities around us, to feel the presence of the energy flowing through every living being, in every element of nature. My progress was astounding, far surpassing anything I could have imagined. My martial arts colleagues, unaware of these manifestations, marveled at my new skills, constantly asking me what the secret of this extraordinary training was that transformed me day by day. At the same time, I had immersed myself in the meticulous study of every teaching, recording all the conversations on mini-cassettes, then transcribing every word, every phrase, into notebooks that I reread constantly. Every nuance, every word carried a deep meaning that I had to understand, analyze, and dissect. This quest for truth, this need to verify the accuracy of every teaching, pushed me to ask more and more questions. The master often called me a terrible student, both amused and annoyed by my insatiable thirst to understand, to accept nothing without having explored everything. But these sessions had a cost. Gradually, Fabienne grew tired, her body bearing the weight of these repeated manifestations. The master, perceiving her fatigue, declared that it was time to end this process. From now on, the messages would no longer pass through her, but would be transmitted directly to me. However, he warned me, these will not be words you can record, they will be sensations, deep intuitions, almost telepathic. You will be able to feel, to know, to understand. The thought of losing these intense moments, these precious dialogues, plunged me into deep sadness. Yet I couldn't stop there. I had to continue, to seek out this direct contact that the master had promised me. At first, It was difficult. The sensations were weak, fleeting, like barely audible whispers in the wind. Each small phrase, each intuition, was like a drop of water in an arid desert. I absolutely needed to improve the quality of the contacts. I asked the voice what to do to obtain clearer communications. But there was no response. I then decided to put into practice everything the master had taught me to get this response. I started by meditating for a long time in the evening before going to sleep, but no answer came. I tried a technique of conscious sleep, maintaining intense concentration even while sleeping, but again, nothing. In the morning, I rose with the sun, practicing Tai Chi, breathing exercises, and sunrise meditation, Surya Yoga. But the silence persisted. Finally, I went into the woods, trying to establish an energy transfer with a tree, to feel the life inhabiting it. Still nothing. At the end of this frustrating day, I respectfully saluted the forest, thanking it for hosting me during these exercises. And then, in this moment of total surrender, a violent breath struck my face, like a wind from nowhere, passing through my entire being. And with this breath, a phrase exploded in my mind, a thunderous phrase that changed everything. You have your answer. Work every second. This revelation left me speechless. Everything I had attempted, all the exercises I had applied to receive an answer, was already the answer. The key to intensifying my contact with the invisible, with the master, lay in every practice, in every moment of concentration, in every breath. The secret wasn't in some magic formula, but in constancy, perseverance, in living every moment as a silent prayer, a communion with the universe. From then on, the contacts became clearer, more precise. I began to record these experiences in a book, a sort of logbook where I wrote down every new understanding, every teaching, passed down not only by the master, but also by other entities who came to instruct me on deeper aspects of energy, qi, ki, the mastery of martial arts and intuition. This patient and meticulous work transformed me, leading me toward a different state of consciousness, where every fiber of my being was awake. It was no longer just technical progress I was achieving, but a true inner metamorphosis. Each perception, each ability amplified, bringing me ever closer to the very essence of what I had always sought to understand. And in this process, I felt I was approaching an even greater truth, an ancient knowledge encapsulated in a text I had yet to discover. The Book of Iya. This book, I knew, would be the pinnacle of everything I had learned, the guiding thread of the work I now present to you. Chapter 4. The Mechanisms of Destiny. On this journey toward the invisible, it is sometimes difficult to discern the boundary between reality and imagination, between what is dictated by ancient wisdom and what the mind creates to soothe its own doubts. Yet, through my experiences, certain manifestations have confirmed that all of this far exceeds what I could comprehend through reason alone. One day, while deeply engaged in teaching martial arts, the situation became critical. My car, an old and faithful companion, began showing alarming signs of wear. The steering axle was in bad shape, making more noise every day, turning each drive into a dangerous venture. I knew I was pushing my luck, but lacking the means, I had no choice but to continue driving the defective vehicle. One afternoon, in the woods, seeking to understand the mysteries of the future, I consulted the voice that had accompanied me for years. The responses seemed cryptic, unrelated to my immediate concerns. Frustrated, I lashed out, "It's all well and good to talk about spirituality, but what can I do about my car? I don't have any money. What will happen if I keep going like this?" The reply was clear, almost cutting. "There will be an accident, there will be a death, and then there will be a rebirth, but we could save time if you repaired your car." These words resonated within me, but pragmatism took over. Without money, how could I follow this advice? Embrace letting go, the voice said. Be in harmony with the peace and energy around you. With the spirit of a samurai, I accepted these words and sat in the woods, plunging into deep meditation, seeking to calm the turmoil within me and find the inner peace the guide preached. Soon after, I had to meet a young student in distress. My car clattered and trembled at every turn, but I drove to the boy's house nonetheless. Upon arrival, his neighbor, an old man with a kind expression, came out of his house. "Sir, I see what you're doing for this young man, and I find it admirable, but I must tell you, your car is dangerous." He introduced himself as a retired mechanic, and, in a twist of fate that wasn't really one, he happened to have a perfectly intact steering axle in his garage, exactly like the one I needed. "Leave me your car while you work with your student. I'll take care of it." The afternoon passed, and when I returned, the car was like new. I realized then that the words the voice had told me took on a whole new meaning. When one acts with truth, with honor, and dedicates oneself to their tasks, solutions come on their own, as if by magic. Days went by, yet doubts persisted. Maybe I'm inventing all of this. Maybe I'm crazy, I sometimes thought. The response came, direct and unequivocal. Do not doubt. Doubt leads to madness. Be true to yourself in honor and love. All is one. All is perfect. These words etched themselves into my mind, but another experience was to further strengthen my faith. I was to attend a workshop in Apt with two women affectionately known as the two little sisters of Apt. They were in their 30s, each married with 2 children, but they did not live together, meeting only occasionally. This workshop, gathering around 50 students, was to last all day. In preparing for this event, I asked the voice what I could expect when I met the sisters. The answer: there will be a private conversation about purity. This prediction puzzled me. With so many students and a packed schedule, how would there be time for such a conversation? Yet, on the day of the event, my car refused to start. Unable to make it to the workshop, I was consumed with doubt. If this guide were real, he would have known I couldn't attend, I thought. This failure seemed to confirm my fears. 6 months later, after the event had almost faded from memory, I found myself, by chance, in the region of Apt. Finishing work earlier than expected, I decided to visit a house that, by intuition, might belong to one of the 2 sisters. Finding the right house was a miracle, and even more so, finding them both there together, given that they rarely saw each other. But the miracle happened. They were there, together, having coffee. They welcomed me warmly, and during our conversation, we spoke at length about purity. It was only as I left their home that I remembered the prediction about a conversation on purity with the 2 sisters. Struck by this memory, I went out to meditate in the forest, and I received a cutting answer. "We told you you would have a conversation on purity with the sisters. We never told you when." That day, they mentioned the date of the workshop, which I no longer recall. "You learned patience and faith," the voice reminded me. This simple reminder made me realize that the when was often up to me, and that the guide had never imposed any time limits. With this lesson, I resolved never again to doubt these communications, whether they came from my subconscious or an external source. In my martial arts-trained mind, imbued with the samurai spirit, the accuracy of this guidance now seemed obvious. Instead of tormenting myself about whether this voice came from a guide or my subconscious, I decided to trust that this voice functioned perfectly. It had shown me that it transcended time and all possible and imaginable situations. It was no longer the source of the voice that mattered, but its ability to guide me towards something extraordinary, an evolution that I could, in turn, pass on to others to help them in their own progression. From this acceptance came total confidence, allowing me to pursue these practices with new intensity. I let myself be inhabited by these entities, fully aware of the transformations taking place within me. I taught these techniques to my most advanced students, guiding them on this path as well. Among them was Beatrice, a student of rare sensitivity, with whom I would soon attend a workshop in Belgium, in Ytre, which would lead us to the threshold of a new revelation, the Book of Ea. Chapter 5. Encounters with the Invisible. Before I began the journey to uncover the mystery of the Book of Ea, there is a story I wish to share, one that took place in Lyon and left an indelible mark on my life. At that time, I was working at Sakuni, a center for ultra-violent young delinquents. It was difficult and demanding work, but well paid, a job I could handle thanks to my martial arts and psychology background. These young people, full of rage and violence, often pushed me to my limits, forcing me to draw upon my reserves of patience and inner strength. One day, after a particularly challenging morning, I found myself in a shopping center with 6 or 7 of these young people. Tired of their rudeness and cruelty, I needed to escape, if only for a moment. I slipped away quickly into a bookstore, hoping to buy a book by my yoga teacher. These books, with their large white covers, were easy to spot. I hurried through the shelves, grabbed a book at random, convinced it was the one I wanted, and rushed to the checkout, eager to rejoin my group before they caused any trouble. At the checkout, I realized my mistake. It wasn't a book by my teacher, but a work titled Talking with Angels by Gita Malas, edition Diamond. Intrigued, I read the back cover and discovered it was the story of Gita, who connected with angels during the war, an experience strangely resonant with my own spiritual encounters. I decided to buy it. The book captivated me immediately. After 2 days of work with the young people, I spent the rest of my free time devouring it. In less than a week, I had finished, and it left a profound impression on me. A few days later, while walking in Lyon, I stumbled upon a poster announcing a conference by Gita Malas. To my surprise, it was happening that very day on a nearby street. I decided to attend. The venue, a former cinema, was packed. Gita, a gentle elderly woman, answered questions with infinite kindness. When the microphone reached me, I asked her a simple question. Gita, when the angel spoke to you, your soul exploded like a divine firework. You entered into a marvelous ecstasy, an infinite joy. Aren't you afraid that one day you might forget all of this and return to being just an ordinary person? She smiled softly, then replied in a calm voice, You cannot forget that. You have become something else forever, and you will remain so forever. It was the shortest answer of the conference, just a single sentence followed by a benevolent smile. Other, more complex questions required long responses, but for me, those few words were enough. At the end of the conference, Gita had to cross the hall to leave, and as she passed near me, she placed her hand on my shoulder. She leaned in and whispered in my ear, This is very good, what is happening to you. Continue. This simple touch felt like an encounter with the invisible, as if, through her, I touched the presence of angels. As I left, I felt an urgent need to meet her in private. But she was surrounded by a crowd of people, all wanting her autograph. Disliking this adulation of personality, I decided to leave, but once home, I felt foolish. I should have insisted, I should have approached her. The next day, determined to see her again, I returned to the cinema, hoping to find information about possible workshops or other conferences. As I arrived, Gita appeared on the other side of the street. She recognized me immediately, smiled, and said, "Ah, I see why I had to come back." She asked me to wait a few minutes, and after taking care of some matters with the people at the cinema, She spent the day with me. We met several times afterward. Our friendship, though brief due to her frequent travels, was intense and precious. Gita and I shared similar experiences, deep sensations, and she immediately recognized, through my sincere question, that I had gone through experiences akin to hers. Similarly, I shared a friendship with Madeleine Chavanon, a magnetizer over 90 years old, filled with kindness and infinite gentleness. At that time, I was seriously ill, and Madeleine had taken it upon herself to heal me with her gifts of magnetism. Initially, her treatments worked well, but soon my condition deteriorated again. When I told her, she was deeply saddened, convinced that her advanced age prevented her from healing as before. Not wanting to disappoint her, I chose to lie. I told her I was feeling better and even pretended to be fully cured. I consider this lie a gift from my soul and heart, a gesture to offer this exceptional woman one last victory, even if it was only an illusion. When Madeleine was on her deathbed, I was by her side. In her final moments, as she seemed lost in a light coma, I gently squeezed her shoulder, trying to see if she still needed anything. She remained still for a few seconds, then suddenly her large blue eyes opened. She looked at the ceiling, raised her arms toward the sky, and exclaimed, "It's so beautiful. It's wonderful. It's fantastic." Turning to us, she added, "I have fulfilled my task. It is up to you to fulfill yours." Then she turned again toward the sky, repeating those words of joy before she passed away. These encounters with extraordinary beings, inspired by the same force I felt growing within me, only strengthened my conviction. They were living examples, models to follow on my own spiritual path. They encouraged me to continue with certainty, kindness, love, and strength toward a destiny that I now knew to be peaceful and radiant. It was with this determination and renewed faith that I prepared to leave with my student for Ytre, Belgium, where the workshop would reveal the secrets of the Book of Ea. Chapter 6. The Song of the Miraculous. To understand the person I was at that time, one must revisit the years when I was teaching all across France. Karate, Aikido, Tai Chi Chuan, and yoga were integral parts of my daily life, but they were only one facet of my commitment. I was part of an association called the International Karate Do Shotokai, IKDS, and, alongside my private classes, I had started organizing workshops on extrasensory perception, the art of channeling, connecting with entities, and exploring the edges of human consciousness. These years were marked by constant travel. I went from one end of Europe to the other, sharing my knowledge, sometimes in physical and martial workshops, sometimes in more contemplative, spiritual retreats. In Belgium, I had already led 2 workshops. The first was a small affair with only 2 students, despite extensive advertising. Far from being discouraged, I welcomed these 2 souls with the same enthusiasm as if there had been dozens. The following year, these same students, impressed by my open approach and patience, returned with 6 more people, bringing the group to 8. The next year, word of my teaching had spread, and a group of 40 people awaited me for the workshop in Ytre. This number, the result of years of commitment and perseverance, was proof that my work was bearing fruit. I arrived a few days in advance, accompanied by my student Beatrice, a woman gifted with high levels of perception and channeling abilities. We were staying in a large farmhouse, surrounded by fields, with a huge room for our practices. Upon arriving, I reconnected with Michel and Joël, a couple of friends who had attended my first workshop in Belgium. Joël, a reserved artist, was working on a painting she kept carefully hidden, as artists often do, until their work is complete. As soon as I arrived at their home, I jokingly declared, "Ah, that's a drawing of me." Joël looked at me, surprised, and asked why I said that. I replied that it was just an intuition, a harmless joke. In the days leading up to the workshop, the farm and its surroundings became the scene of events that defied understanding for many. One afternoon, while walking near the fields, I found myself face to face with a particularly aggressive bull. The farmer, who witnessed the scene, was terrified, fearing for my life. However, I approached the animal, projecting all my energy to calm its anger. Slowly, I placed my hand on it, stroking it calmly. To everyone's astonishment, the bull relaxed completely. The farmer, astonished, could only murmur, "I've never seen anything like it. What you're doing is extraordinary." This story spread quickly among the few students already present, no doubt embellished by the witnesses' wonder. But it was only the beginning. A day or two later, another equally strange event occurred. A cow was about to give birth, but the calf, positioned incorrectly, couldn't come out. The veterinarian, called in urgently, declared that the calf was dead and that a caesarean was necessary to remove it. Several of us held the cow during the procedure, but surprisingly, the animal remained perfectly still, as if accepting her fate with complete serenity. When the veterinarian pulled out the lifeless calf and laid it on the ground, something in me refused to accept this outcome. I focused intensely on the small, inert body, softly repeating, "Breathe, breathe, breathe." After about a minute, against all odds, the calf took a deep breath, then another. The veterinarian rushed over, incredulous. "It's alive! This is incredible!" He attended to the calf while I stood there, still holding the cow, realizing the magnitude of what had just happened. Despite being brought back to life, the calf seemed unwilling to accept its existence. It refused to drink its mother's milk, allowing itself to waste away until I intervened. Each day, the farmer prepared a large bottle, and each day the calf would only feed when it saw me. This strange bond between us, this daily miracle, only amplified the aura of mystery surrounding the upcoming workshop. Among the participants, 2 young guitarists requested a private channeling session. We moved away from the group, settling under a tree in the shade. Beatrice, who was with me, withdrew gently to allow a musical entity named Doré to come forward, an entity whose true nature we never fully understood, but which seemed deeply connected to music. Beatrice, who knew nothing about music, was suddenly inhabited by this entity, which guided the musicians with incredible precision, dictating chords and melodies. Within minutes, a song emerged, simple, gentle, and harmonious, full of love and kindness. The musicians, moved by the experience, said they had never experienced anything so extraordinary. This music, full of meaning and tenderness, accompanied us throughout the workshop. It became an invitation to listen to the silence, to perceive what lies beyond words, to be sensitive to something more subtle, stronger, yet always presented with infinite delicacy. When the workshop finally began, the atmosphere was almost Christ-like. A miraculous ambience reigned, a collective ecstasy. Each participant seemed transported by a profound joy, a connection that went beyond mere words. From the very first hours, I sensed that this workshop would be different, full of revelations. At the start of the workshop, I spoke about my past reincarnations, explaining that some teachings I shared stemmed from a previous life. Joelle, one of the participants, began to cry. I asked her why, but she refused to explain. It was only later in the afternoon that she returned with the painting she had kept hidden since my arrival. When I saw it, I immediately recognized the face of the master I had claimed to be in a past life. Overwhelmed, Joelle asked how I could have known. I had no clear answer. As I often did, I simply said, "Things pass through me. They just are." The same was true for Beatrice, who, though unaware of her gifts, allowed this musical entity to express itself through her, transmitting knowledge that neither she nor I fully understood. This workshop, marked by intense emotions and moments of profound inspiration, opened a new path. Through these events, I began to glimpse the direction that would later lead me to the discovery of the Book of Ea, a text bearing even higher knowledge, but that is a story for another chapter. Conclusion of the Part 2. In this conclusion of the second part, we reach a pivotal point where the concepts of self-overcoming, exploration of physical and intellectual limits, and spiritual awakening take on their full significance. Karate do Shotokai, a discipline of mastery and self-control, becomes here a powerful symbol of a journey that transcends physical training to rise towards a form of higher wisdom. The presence of figures like Gita Malas and Madeleine Chavanon, emblematic through their respective accomplishments, reminds us that the quest for self and spiritual elevation begins with total immersion in human potential, a deep commitment to effort and will. These extraordinary paths show us that there is no easy way to spiritual elevation. Each path is one of absolute dedication, a sacrifice of comfort to access something greater. This idea of a spiritual connection is not a promise of escape or mere passive meditation. It demands that one has fully committed, that one has crossed the boundaries of what the human body and mind can achieve. Furthermore, this notion takes on an even deeper dimension through the reference to the Book of Ea. This text, complex and mysterious, is not a mere guide. It represents a higher dimension of learning, one that only those who have already traversed significant spiritual thresholds can grasp. The Book of Ea is therefore not a manual for beginners, but an invitation to a more subtle, more advanced initiation for those who have already awakened forces within themselves beyond conventional human understanding. The third part, which will introduce Beatrice's initiation, prepares to reveal even more of the intricacies of this inner journey. This initiation will not be a mere transmission of knowledge. It will involve trials, intense reactions, which will highlight the challenges and sometimes the resistances every seeker faces on the path to spiritual discovery. And if some readers choose to skip this section to go directly to the Book of Ea, they risk losing essential insights, as Beatrice's initiation is a fundamental step to understanding spiritual abilities in action. As for exploring Gita Malas's work, I must emphasize that although the available documentaries are in French, do not be discouraged. Thanks to automatic subtitles on YouTube, it is entirely possible to obtain high-quality English translations. Many are unaware that this option exists or do not know how to activate it. Simply select the subtitles and choose the automatic translation option to explore the extraordinary story of Gita Malas, a life of accomplishments that demonstrates the depths the human spirit can reach. This work should not become a simple guide to personal power, but an adventure of discovery and understanding that step by step brings us to touch upon a broader dimension. It reminds us that the essence of this quest lies in a delicate balance between developing extraordinary abilities and understanding that all true spiritual power is, above all, an opening towards others, towards the world, and ultimately towards oneself. Thus, as this second part concludes, we lay the foundation for the journey that will unfold in the third part. It is a reminder that spiritual awakening is a process, and that each step, each experience, lived with sincerity and commitment, is a door that opens to deeper revelations and a broader understanding of what it truly means to be in contact with these divine forces. To conclude this section, here is the translation of the music created by the Fairy Doré with the guitarists. These words are like a gentle incantation, a song of peace and joy, which I pass on to you, hoping they will resonate in your heart and mind. Here are a few words whispered into your ear to bring you happiness, the joy of living, fullness, balance, and love forever. Accompanied by a delicate sound, akin to the murmur of dolphins, this melody evokes serenity and the beauty of the soul. On this note, I leave you, and we shall meet again as we continue our exploration in the third part with Beatrice's initiation. Then in the fourth and fifth parts for even deeper revelations.
Voici quelques mots soufflés dans votre oreille pour vous apporter le bonheur, la joie de vivre, la plénitude, l'équilibre et l'amour pour toujours. Voici quelques mots soufflés dans votre oreille pour vous apporter le bonheur, la joie de vivre, la plénitude, l'équilibre et l'amour pour toujours.